They thought I was a ghost. Truth is, I was just quiet. And quiet men in forgotten towns are the most dangerous kind. We don't roar. We remember. Every face. Every lie. Every hand that reached into our life thinking we were too small to bite back. Black Yar never forgave the weak. Out here, you either grow teeth or get buried by someone who did. I had teeth once. Work hard, keep your head down teeth. The kind you sharpen on frost mornings, splitting wood before the sun even bothered to rise. The kind you earn pulling tractors from dead soil and fixing roofs with your own hands. I had a family, land, a life, a future. Then they came for it. Not soldiers, worse. Men in warm coats with clean boots. Men who smiled while counting what wasn't theirs yet. Men with paper power, signatures sharper than knives. They showed up like winter, slow at first, then suddenly everywhere. First a friendly visit. Then a proposal. Then a warning. And then the machines rolled in. Excavators. Survey stakes. Security in black jackets. Like the earth already belonged to them. Sell, they said. Move, they said. Be smart. Funny how people who think they're offering advice. I said no. In Black Yar we were raised like stone, stubborn, cold, heavy. My grandfather bled for that land. My father worked it until his back bent like river reeds in storm winds. And I had roots deeper than their steel could reach. So they didn't offer again. They took. Permit by permit. Visit by visit. Then the inspection. Then the raid. Planted evidence. False reports. Whispers in the dark corners of town where loyalty used to live. Once your name turns dirty enough, even old friends cross the street like you carry plague. I was dragged out of my own house. Public humiliation, cheaper than bullets and just as effective. They called me obstruction. They called me danger. They called me problem. But problems don't disappear. They wait. And I waited. 6 months in a cold cell. Concrete bed. Metal door. Silence thick enough to choke on. A man can rot in there, or sharpen. I chose to sharpen. I counted hours, breaths, sounds. I memorized footsteps, voices, names. I replayed every moment, every insult, every bootstep that crushed my soil. When they let me out, they expected me broken. I walked out colder than frost. My land? Gone behind fences like a prison. My house? Flattened. My tools? Sold. My name? Dirt under their tires. And the town? The town looked at me like at a stray dog that forgot its place. No wife to return to. No brother to drink with. No mother waiting in the doorway. Just wind. And silence. That's when I learned something powerful. A man with nothing left cannot be controlled. So I didn't scream. I didn't swing fists. That's what they expected. They wanted me angry, reckless, loud so they could crush me legally and smile doing it. Instead, I disappeared. Not far. Never far. Just enough to become rumor and shadow. I lived in an old hunting hut past the riverbank. Roof leaking, floor uneven, stove rusted. But it was mine and no one knew I was there. Wolves howled at night, real ones. I listened. Learned from them. They don't attack when angry. They stalk when hungry. And I was starving. Day by day I rebuilt myself. Hands that once held tools now held patience. I hunted, traded quiet favors, watched roads, counted guards, listened to gossip in gas stations and cheap bars. Nobody notices a tired man in old clothes buying bread and asking nothing. People talk when they think you are nobody. And they spoke plenty. The company wasn't alone. The mayor's office was in it. Local police too. Papers paid to smear. Even a priest softened truth in sermons to keep peace. Funny word. Peace is just quiet that belongs to someone else. I didn't want their peace. I wanted balance. I went back to the edge of my old land one dawn. Fog thick, sun weak, earth frozen hard. I stood where my porch once stood, boots sinking slightly into memory. I could almost hear the old floor creak, smell breakfast, feel a life that died without a funeral. A fresh sign hung on new fencing. Private development. Future industrial site. Future. My future. And my blood burned, but my breath stayed calm. Revenge isn't fire. Fire rages and dies. Revenge is ice. Ice waits and cracks foundations without warning. And first cracks start in silence. I walked the perimeter. Counted cameras. Noted guard patterns. Watched where trucks came, where workers smoked, where supervisors argued. Humans always expose themselves. Impatience, arrogance, routine. Predictable as winter. Later that week, I sat on a hill overlooking the village. Cold wind cut through my coat, but I didn't move. A car drove by, sleek, black, tinted windows. The man inside didn't see me. He never looks up. Powerful men rarely do. That was him. The one who pulled strings. The investor. The man who smiled at my ruin. I whispered his name like a curse falling from frostbit lips. He lived warm. He ate rich. He slept easy. The world believed him powerful. Untouchable. But I knew something the world forgot. Every empire falls the moment it ignores a man with nothing left to lose. And before I take back land, dignity, name, I will take his certainty. A wolf doesn't attack first. A wolf appears first. You hear a twig snap behind you. A low breath in the dark. And you realize, you are not the hunter anymore. I rose from the hill and walked into the wind. Slow. Steady. Purpose in each step. I'm not rage. I am consequence. And tonight, they will feel the first shiver. Not pain. Not loss. Just fear, the quiet kind that crawls under the skin when you finally understand. The man you buried is walking again. And he remembers. Fear is not thunder. It is the quiet hum before the storm, when the air thickens and animals stop moving. When you feel something watching but cannot turn fast enough to prove it. That night I made sure fear found them first. I didn't go to their homes. I didn't break gates or cut wires. That is noise, and noise serves the powerful. Noise gives them a reason to crush you loudly and call it law. Instead, I returned to the village without entering it. Blackyer sleeps early. 1 paved road, 3 dirt ones, 2 streetlights that flicker like dying fireflies. I stood beneath the edge of the forest line, hood up, breath steady as frost gathered in my beard. From there I could see it all. The new development office, a portable building lit late. The mayor's house, too big for a town this small. The police station, trucks lined like wolves guarding carcass. And the church bell tower, once a promise of mercy, now only echo. I did not hate them. Hatred is wasteful. I studied them instead. Learned them. People here think power means protection. But power means exposure. The higher you climb, the more angles a bullet could find you from. I'm not a bullet. I am patience wearing skin. I walked along back paths only locals know. Past frost-crushed grass and old fences. Boots silent, breath slow. I stopped at the mayor's gate first. I did nothing, only placed a pebble on the wooden post. A single gray stone. A message only I understood. Then I moved on. At the police station I paused by the side window. Inside, officers laughed over cards. Thick jackets hung on hooks, badges polished. They believed winter obeyed them. Men in warm rooms always forget cold exists. I left a second pebble on the sill. Gray. Same size. Same silent weight. Last stop, the development office. A generator hummed beside it, coughing fumes into the night. 2 men inside argued over documents, pointing, gesturing, self-important. Third pebble. 3 marks. No one saw me. Symbols matter. They grow in the mind like mold in damp walls. I wasn't sending a threat. I was planting a presence. Making myself real again, without words, without violence, without mistakes. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them fear shadows before they fear me in daylight. As I turned to leave, lights flared near the road. Headlamps. A black SUV rolled slow along the gravel, heavy tires cracking ice. Him. The investor. The man who decided my life's worth with a pen. I watched from behind bare trees, breath silent. He stepped out, coat thicker than most men here earn in a winter. Cigarette lit. Smoke and cold air looked like a ghost leaving his mouth. He stretched, relaxed, certain the night belonged to him. He spoke on the phone. Voice calm, confident. Words floated across frozen stillness. Everything is handled. Locals are quiet. We break ground in spring. Quiet. Yes, quiet is a weapon. And he had forgotten whose hands hold it now. He ended the call and walked inside. I remained until the building lights dimmed and the SUV engine cooled. Then I moved away, slow and silent, leaving no footprint where it mattered. Not yet. By dawn, I sat in my hut sharpening a simple knife. Not for blood. For discipline. The rhythm steadied my pulse. Metal against stone, clean, measured. Precision is built one drag at a time. Around sunrise, someone knocked on the hut door. Only 2 kinds of people knock in a place like this. Fools or ghosts? It was neither. It was Stepan, a man older than Frost and twice as hard. Once my father's friend. Then just another villager trying not to drown in someone else's tide. He stood without speaking. I didn't invite him in. He didn't expect it. You were seen, he said finally, voice low as winter soil. By who? Not sure. But whispers moved before light. Good. My presence worked faster than I planned. They think you want trouble, he added. I don't want trouble. My tone flat, controlled. I am trouble. He studied me then, searching my eyes for fire or madness. He found neither. Only direction. You can't fight them alone, he said. I am not fighting them. I sheathed the blade. I am returning balance. Stepan exhaled, long and tired. Balance costs blood. I looked at him without blinking. So did taking my land. Silence. Finally, he reached into his coat and placed something on the step. Not money. Not food. A worn photograph, my father standing beside him years ago, hands dirty from work, smiles small but real. You're not the only one who remembers, he said. Then he left. That picture stayed outside until wind knocked it against the wood. I did not bring it in. Memory is useful only when cold. After he disappeared into trees, I walked to the river. Ice forming along edges, water black and slow. The air tasted like iron. A perfect place to think. I did not need allies. I needed information. Allies come later, after doubt turns into belief. First, I require evidence. Paper, signatures, trails of corruption. Power only fears truth sharpened by strategy. The men who took my life used law as a blade. I will use it as a mirror until they see themselves and shatter. I returned to the village after noon, not hiding, simply quiet. Put down. Shoulders straight. Like someone who belongs and dares anyone to say otherwise. People noticed. Looks cut across streets like thin knives. One man paused fixing his fence. A woman pulling groceries slowed. Old friend Petro turned his face away, shame heavy in his shoulders. Shame means truth still survives in someone. Useful. I passed the police station again. This time I walked right by the window where my pebble rested. Inside, voices tense, brows furrowed. Fear had arrived. Small, invisible, heavy. Exactly as intended. No one spoke to me. Good. Words weaken beginnings. I stood outside the development fence before sunset. Workers packing tools, laughing nervous. Their supervisor barked orders trying to hide unease. I leaned on the fence, perfectly still. Watching. Measuring. When the last truck left, I whispered to the empty site. You built on stolen ground. Now you will sink in it. Then I turned and walked away, leaving only my footprints in thin snow. Proof I was real. Reminder I did not run. Night swallowed the village again. But this time the quiet belonged to me. A wolf does not attack when seen. A wolf waits until your heartbeat reveals your weakness. And tonight, Blackyar had started to listen. Soon it would remember. Soon they would too. This is not revenge. This is restoration. This is consequence walking upright. And I have only taken one step. Power does not break in a storm. Power breaks in a whisper, when men who believe themselves untouchable start checking their locks twice, start staring at shadows too long, start remembering every wrong they ever made and wondering which one is finally coming to collect. By the third night they felt me. Not as a man, as a presence. The first crack showed at dawn. A police truck rolled slowly past the tree near my hut. 2 officers inside. Windows down. Looking, pretending it was routine patrol. Blackyar never had routine patrols. Not until I stood back up. They didn't approach. Fear held the wheel for them. They did not want proof I existed. Rumor was safer than certainty. But rumor was already doing its work. I watched them leave and smiled, small, tight, controlled. Fear is fuel. And I intended to burn a lot of it. I moved before breakfast, if you could call stale bread breakfast, and headed to the old bus stop outside the village. A rusted tin roof, cracked bench, abandoned but still breathing history. That bench once held farmers discussing harvests, kids late for school, old men arguing about weather. Now it held only dust, until I sat there waiting. At 6:42 the investor's SUV rolled down the road. Right on the schedule I had observed for days. He liked routine. Routine is a weakness masquerading as order. He saw me. His eyes narrowed. Brake lights flared. The SUV stopped 20 meters from me. Window lowered halfway. You should leave, he said. Voice controlled, but there was a tremor. Not fear of violence, fear of a man who still stands after being buried. I didn't move. This isn't your land anymore. I looked past him. At the frozen fields. At the distant hills. At the soil which carried my family long before he ever breathed ambition. It will be, I said. Come. Factual. Not a threat. A future. He exhaled, frustrated, as if speaking to a stain he couldn't wash off. You don't understand how the world works. I understand enough, I replied. Men like you think paperwork makes you God. It makes me right, he snapped. No, I said. It makes you temporary. He gripped the wheel. Silence stretched like a drawn bowstring. Then he drove off, engine louder than needed. He wanted the sound to bury doubt. It only fed it. Good. I stood, walked to the community archive building. A small brick office once meant for village council decisions. Now neglected, dusty, but still holding records older than him, older than pipelines and signatures and development promises. I had a key. Not mine originally. Stepan pressed it into my palm before dawn. You'll need proof, he said. Everyone falls on truth eventually. Inside, old paper smelled like soil after rain. I opened drawers, scanned maps, land deeds, inheritance lines. My family's ownership stretched back decades, uninterrupted, legal, indisputable. Then I found something more valuable. A timeline of transfer approvals and environmental certificates signed suspiciously fast, too fast, all stamped within 1 week by the mayor's office, police, and the regional development board. A pipeline deal buried in agricultural expansion. Classic corruption, sloppy by arrogance, not necessity. I photographed everything. Not with a phone, with a small camera, low-tech, untraceable. Technology is useful, but truth written in ink carries weight digital files never will. Paper scares cowards because it cannot be hacked back into silence. At noon I walked into town. This time I did not hide or stalk. I walked straight down the main road like a man who had never been erased. Eyes followed. Whispers followed. Doubt followed the whispers. At the church steps, the mayor stood speaking with a council member. Warm coat, polished shoes, confidence cracking like ice under a slow river current. His gaze met mine. He froze. I didn't change pace. Didn't blink. I simply walked past him, silent as judgment. He called after me, voice too thin. Jacob, you should really consider? But his sentence collapsed under its own fear. Consider what? Leaving? Accepting ruin? Pretending I deserved it? No man asks for reconsideration unless he feels the ground shifting beneath him. I kept walking. Next stop, the bar. Not to drink, to speak without speaking. Men gossip loudest when pretending to be strong. 3 local contractors sat near the window. I entered, stood behind them. They fell silent mid-sentence. No one asked what I wanted. I placed a single sheet of legal copy on the table, stamped certificate proving land ownership lineage. Then I left without a word. I didn't need to explain. They could read. They could think. They could wonder, if this paper exists, what else does he have? The answer was simple, enough. Night came early. Snow started to fall, fine grains drifting like ash over cold memory. I returned to my hut and lit a single lamp. The wind howled. Wolves answered in the distance. They were closer tonight. So was I. Before sleep, I sharpened the knife again. Ritual, not necessity. Revenge is not in the blade, it is in the patience that sharpens it. I looked out into the dark woods and spoke quietly. Tomorrow your walls shake. Not anger. Not hunger. Certainty. Morning broke gray and brittle. Frost bit through my coat. But inside I was a furnace. I went straight to the newspaper office in the next town, small place run by a young journalist tired of covering lost cats and grain prices. I handed her the documents. She didn't look impressed at first. Until she saw the signatures. Until she compared dates. Until her eyes widened with the realization. This wasn't rumor. This was evidence. Why bring this to me? She whispered. Because truth needs teeth. And what do you want? Exposure, I said. And silence after. I didn't need fame. I needed consequence. Once truth breathes, it spreads. And once it spreads, power gasps. She nodded slowly. This will cause a storm. No, I corrected. This will melt ice. That afternoon the article went live. Headline. Illegal land seizure in Black Yar. Documents link officials to fraud. Names printed. Dates printed. Connections exposed. Phones started ringing across the village like alarm bells. Engines revved. Doors slammed. Panic moved the air like wind before avalanche. I sat on the ridge, watching the village shake under truth's weight. Sirens in the distance, not to arrest me but to save themselves. Stepan joined me, breath visible in cold air. You could burn them, he said quietly. No, I replied. They'll burn themselves. Screams echoed from the town square, not pain but fear. The kind that tastes like metal and ends careers, marriages, reputations. Corruption bleeds loud. Justice whispers. Stepan looked at me. And the land? It returns when they fall. He nodded. What now? I watched the frost melt slightly under the weak winter sun. Not warm. but warmer than it had been. Now, I said, I rebuild? And they remember. Silence stretched between us like respect. Wolves howled again, closer than ever. Not threat. Recognition. A wolf does not roar at victory. A wolf simply stands where no one believed it would rise again. I stood. My land was not yet in my hands, but their fear already was. And in Black Yar, fear is the beginning of justice. I turned toward the valley, toward what was mine, toward what would be mine again. Not revenge. Balance. Not rage. Restoration. A man cannot change the past, but he can make sure the future never forgets who he became. And I, the man they buried, walked back into the world alive. Finished. Prepared. Remembered. Wolves do not forgive. We return.